It's amazing, isn't it? How many ways we can say the same thing in English.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you want to tell someone that something is possible, but you're not, like totally sure,
Right.
there are so many tiny little words we use to get that nuance across.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how these subtle differences, these little tiny differences, they can completely change the meaning of what you're saying.
Exactly.
And for anyone learning English, really trying to master the art of expressing possibilities, understanding these nuances, it's really, really key.
Totally. It's like having this whole toolkit for maybe, but knowing which tool to use for the job.
Yeah,
That's the real challenge.
absolutely.
So in this deep dive, we're going to be looking at these tiny but powerful words called modal verbs,
Right.
and specifically how they let us express all those different shades of possibility.
Yeah.
We're going to go beyond the basics, though.
Okay.
We're going to get into some of those coulda, woulda, shoulda situations that native speakers use all the time.
I like it.
So think of it like unlocking a secret code.
Yeah,
It helps you express yourself with more precision and confidence in English.
that's a great way to put it.
All right, so to kick things off, let's start with what I like to call the power trio. May, might, and could.
Okay.
So when we're talking about something that's possible now or in the future, these three often get used kind of interchangeably.
Right. Exactly.
For example, you might say something like, those two, they could be brothers, they look so much alike. Or, it's pouring here, but it might be sunny at the beach.
Yeah, good examples.
Both sentences express a possibility, but we're not, stating it as a fact.
Right.
We're leaving some room for doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is where context becomes super important.
Yes, I was going to say that.
The true meaning of these modal verbs often depends on the situation and, all that surrounding information. So you, as the listener, as the speaker, you really need to become adept at reading those contextual cues. It's not just about memorizing the words, it's understanding how they function in all these different situations.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh, and you know what? That reminds me of a really common mistake people make.
Oh, yeah.
It's confusing maybe as one word with maybe as two words.
Oh, yes. Classic.
Can we take a quick detour to clarify that?
I think that's a great idea. It's these little distinctions that can really elevate your English,
So maybe that's like saying perhaps or it's possible. Like maybe we'll catch a movie later.
Yeah.
But then maybe implies possibility that's linked to the verb to be.
Right.
So you'd say he may be at the gym.
Yeah.
Small difference, but very important.
Absolutely. It shows like a real attention to detail, which is always a good thing.
So back to modal verbs.
Okay.
What about when we want to talk about things that might not be true or might not happen?
Right.
Those negative possibilities.
Okay. So in that case, we say goodbye to could for now, and we stick with may and might.
Gotcha.
So for instance, they may not be ready on time, or he might not be able to make it.
So we're saying there's a chance that something isn't the case or, won't happen.
Yeah.
And this works for both present and future situations.
Right. Precisely.
Usually the context makes it clear whether we're referring to now or later.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's bring in another modal verb here. Can.
Okay.
Now, can, I think, is where it gets a little bit more complex.
Right.
Because can is like our go-to verb for expressing general possibilities.
Okay.
Things that are generally true across different situations.
I like how you're picking up on that nuance.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So unlike may, might, and could, which are all about those specific possibilities, can kind of tackles these broader truths about the world.
That's a good way to think about it.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see the distinction here, but could you give us some examples?
Sure, yeah. So let's take the sentence, it can take hours to get through security at the airport during peak season.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't about one specific person, or one particular day.
Yeah.
It's a general truth about anyone traveling during those, those busy times.
Okay.
Or how about this? Spring weather can be unpredictable.
Right.
Again, we're talking about a general tendency here.
Right, not a specific instance.
Exactly.
So for those general possibilities, can is, like our winner,
Yeah.
may, might, and could, they wouldn't really fit here.
No, not really.
Got it. Okay. But here's a question for you.
Okay.
Why do you think there's no negative form for these general possibilities with can?
Oh, that's a great question.
What does that tell us about how we perceive these general truths, I guess?
I don't know. It's definitely something to think about. And I
Yeah.
think it would be really interesting to see how these specific and general possibilities play out in real world examples.
Yeah. Maybe we could do a little exercise to test our understanding,
I like where you're going with this.
put our knowledge to the test.
Okay, let's do it. Okay, so we've been talking about how to use these modal verbs to talk about possibilities in the present and in the future.
Right.
But what about when we want to analyze those like what if moments from the past?
Right. Those coulda, woulda, shoulda situations.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
feel like those can get really tricky, you know. How do we even begin to construct sentences when we're talking about possibilities in the past?
Well, it's kind of like we're adding a time machine to our modal verbs, right?
Oh,
We
see.
take our trusty trio, could, might, and may,
Right.
and we pair them up with have and the past participle of the main verb.
Past participle, now for anyone who needs a refresher,
Right.
that form of the verb that we use with have to form the perfect tenses like seen in have seen or gone in have gone.
Right.
Okay, so how about some examples to illustrate how this works with modal verbs?
Sure, yeah. So, let's say your friend is late and you're wondering why, right?
Okay.
You might say, he might have missed his bus. Or maybe you can't find your keys and you say, I may have left them in the car.
Right. So it's like we're acknowledging that something was possible in the past,
Yeah.
but we're not really sure if it actually happened.
Yeah.
We're kind of speculating using those modal verbs to express our uncertainty.
Precisely. And, just like with present and future possibilities, it doesn't, the specific choice of could, may, or might, it doesn't really change the core meaning. They're all conveying that sense of past possibility.
Okay, so what about can?
Right.
Does it get to time travel with us when we're talking about the past?
Unfortunately, can sits this one out.
Okay.
There's no grammatical structure in English that allows us to use can to express past possibility.
Oh, interesting.
So if we wanted to say that something was generally possible in the past, we'd have to rephrase it using a different verb or a different structure. But sticking with these past possibilities,
Right.
can we also use this structure with have and the past participle to talk about things that might not have happened?
Right.
Absolutely. For negative past possibilities, we simply add not after the modal verb.
Okay.
So for example, she might not have received the invitation,
Right.
or they may not known about the change in plans.
Okay, so it's very consistent with how we form the negative possibilities in the present or the future.
Right, exactly.
We stick with may
Yeah,
and might, but could sits this one out again.
could is taking a break for this one.
Could is on a coffee break.
Yeah, could is
Good.
getting coffee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But, could does have a unique role to play when we're talking about past possibilities.
Yes, it does.
And it's one that goes beyond simply expressing, uncertainty about what did or didn't happen.
Exactly.
I love it when grammar gets sneaky like that.
Yeah, it's got its little tricks up its sleeve.
So tell me more about this special function of could.
Okay, so think about all the examples we've looked at so far.
Okay.
We've been using these modal verbs to speculate about things that we don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Like, did he miss his bus? Did I leave my keys in the car?
Right.
We don't know.
We're unsure.
It's all about expressing that lack of certainty about the past.
Right, exactly.
But can also be used to talk about past possibilities in situations where we actually do know what happened.
Mm.
And it often carries the sense of relief that something bad didn't happen.
I think I see what you're saying.
Okay.
Can you give us an example?
Sure, yeah. Imagine you see a child run out into the street without looking,
Okay.
and they narrowly avoid getting hit by a car.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You might say something like, you could have been hurt. Be more careful next time.
Right.
So we know they didn't get hurt.
Right. They didn't actually get hurt.
Right. But we're emphasizing how easily it could have happened.
Yeah, it's like a warning wrapped in a grammar lesson.
Exactly.
I like that. Or let's say your friend was worried about missing their flight.
Right.
And then later you find out that they made it just in time. You might say, oh, he could have missed his plane, but luckily he got there just in time.
Right.
So in these cases, could have is like highlighting this past possibility that didn't actually happen.
Yes.
And it often has this like kind of implied message of relief or, gratitude that things turned out okay.
Exactly.
It's kind of a subtle but powerful way to express that sense of like dodging a bullet.
Yeah.
And it just adds another layer of, complexity to how we use modal verbs to navigate the past.
It does. It does. It's pretty fascinating, actually. It really is amazing how much we can say with, like, just a handful of words.
It's the beauty of language, right?
Yeah.
These small grammatical choices can make such a big
Oh,
difference.
absolutely. Yeah.
We can go from these simple possibilities to, like analyzing past situations, even expressing relief,
Yeah.
all using these modal verbs.
And, for anyone listening, as you continue to refine your English, keep in mind that mastering these subtle differences, it can really let you communicate with more precision.
Totally, and more impact too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into modal verbs for possibilities,
Right.
what key takeaways should our listeners remember?
Well, first and foremost, remember that may, might, and could, those are your, like, trusty companions.
Yeah, our good friends.
Yeah, for expressing those specific possibilities, whether you're talking about the present, future, or past.
Like the three musketeers of maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Always there to help you navigate that uncertainty.
And then we have can, our specialist for those general possibilities.
Yes.
That's the verb we use for like those broader truths that, hold true across different situations.
Right, like traffic can be a nightmare during rush hour.
Right, exactly.
Or learning a new language can be challenging.
Exactly.
General truths about the world.
And then when we want to step back in time, we take our modal verbs and we equip them with have and the past participle.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, we're exploring those what if moments from the past.
Yeah, yeah.
But then there's could, the kind of trickster of the group.
Ah, yes, could.
It plays that double role when we're dealing with past possibilities.
Right. It can express uncertainty about what happened, but it can also highlight a possibility that didn't happen.
Right, often with a sense of relief, like,
yeah, you could have lost everything.
exactly. So much nuance packed into those little modal verbs.
It really is quite fascinating.
So as you continue learning English, I really encourage you to just pay attention to how native speakers use these verbs.
Yeah, great advice.
You hear them in everyday conversations, in movies, you read them in books.
Absolutely. You'll start to pick up on those subtle ways they're being used to not just express possibility, but like emotions and attitude.
It's all about immersing yourself in the language and observing how it works in context.
Exactly.
And don't be afraid to experiment,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Try using those modal verbs in your own speaking and writing.
The more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
This has been such a fun deep dive.
It has.
I feel like we've unlocked a whole new level of understanding when it comes to modal verbs.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
For everyone listening, keep exploring the language, keep practicing.
And most importantly, keep having fun with English.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us.